Afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. We're going to get started in just a few seconds. Just want to check that the technology is working before we do. So if you can see, should I see me and hear on the screen? So if you can see and hear, it's okay. Just give us
Hi, folks.
Hello in the chat box. Let us know that the sound and visuals are working.
Hi, Clay. Hi, Ken.
Very shortly.
Hi, Edward. Richard, Chris, Jody.
If you've just come in, just want to check that you can see and hear us okay. So you're about to see me, see Terry, hear us as well. If you can, just give us a hello in the chat box. Let us know that everything is working. We'll get started very shortly.
Hi, Ashley. Hi, Chris. Just type yes in the box. Y or N. No, don't type N. Just let us know you can see and hear us.
Awesome. Again, we're going to be going over 3 pivotal changes one recruitment business owner made to go from billing 6 figures per year to 6 figures per month. Again, just want to check to make sure you can hear us all clearly. Just give a yes or hello. If you're just coming in, just let us know in the chat box so you can see and hear us okay. And we're going to get started very shortly.
Hi, are you Diane? Hi. Hi, Richard. Hi, Rupert.
For the workshop on 3 pivotal changes one recruitment business owner made to go from billing 6 figures per year to 6 figures per month. Again, I don't know where you are in your business right now, but if you're sort of prioritizing growth at the moment, I'm sure you'll be able to take, at least a few things away from this. Awesome. Perfect. So let's dive right in. And before we sort of get into the actual workshop itself, it's going to be basically me and Terry talking. We've got no slides, no sort of fancy presentation. It's going to be having an open and honest conversation with you about what's worked for several of our clients, the process that they went through. If during the sort of workshop, during our talk, you've got any questions, just post them in the chat box that you see on the right hand side. Again, this is I can promise you that if you sort of give your time to this, you'll get something out of it. You'll go away leaving with actionable steps or actionable ideas that you can plug into your business. But one thing we are going to ask from you is just your time and attention for about 45 to 60 minutes. Terry, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, just come along with an open mind. Be aware that your ego is going to get in the way, and it may say things like, "Yeah, but my market's different. It's different in this country or whatever." And I understand all that. You just need to appreciate that's probably your ego just getting in the way, and it's that can happen. But kind of just have an open mind. And one of our mantras is, if one recruiter can do it, you can do it. If you do what one successful recruiter does, you will get pretty much the same result. So the fact that some of your competitors are doing this right now, it's kind of worth listening to. And by the way, this works in every niche, in every market, in every country that we operate in. So kind of come in with an open mind and see for yourself.
Okay, again, can I just check in? Is everyone okay with that? Does that make sense? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. If that makes sense and you agree to all that, again, if it's no, then probably best to leave right now. I don't want to waste sort of your time or our time or everyone else here's time. But if that's okay with you, just give us a yes in the chat box and then we'll dive right in. 3 pivotal changes one recruitment business owner made to go from billing 6 figures per year to 6 figures per month. Awesome. Perfect. Love it. So again, some of the things we're going to go through in this workshop or this training is, how he went from, being unknown to, the most recognized, sought after recruitment business in his sector. How he goes and books 20 to 40 sales meetings with his ideal prospects every single month, and, how to win more business for higher fees, even if your competitors are offering to work for less. Before we sort of dive into the training, I just want to give you a bit of backstory of our client. Name's Mike. When he approached us, he was generating about between 80 and 100k per year. Well, I think the actual year he came to speak of, it was 80k per year, but he used to be billing around the 100k mark, and at the time was sort of accepted that as his norm. A lot of his peers were doing the same thing, but he was frustrated, right? He's a very, very experienced recruiter and just felt like for the work he was putting in, the work he was doing, he felt like he should be or could be generating more. He'd been at that level for several years and hadn't really seen any real progress. And he sort of found himself, working on anything, working with any client that would really willing to pay him, really. So he was going from sector to sector, working on anything, working really, really hard. He found that as competition has increased, had more recruits had entered the market, he'd had to, lower his fees in order to win business. So he's working for less than he really felt like and really deserved for the, the experience that he had. He was suffering from low fill rates, right? So although he was able to win job orders, he was finding that he was only able to actually fill 20 to 30% of them, which meant that 7% of the time he was working and not getting paid. So not only was he working extremely hard for less than he thought he was worth, he was also not even getting paid 100% of the time on 100% of the job order. So extremely frustrated and extremely fed up with his current situation. Just felt like he deserved more and wanted more. So anything you'd add to that, just to create a picture of where Mike was.
So when he joined us, he was a solo recruiter. I want to emphasize as well, he still is a solo recruiter. He still works from home, and does 6 figures a month now, working from home. One of the things he said that kind of stuck with me and may resonate with you, he said, honestly, I've fallen out of love with recruitment. As Drew said, he had a wealth of experience. And to quote his exact words, he said, Terry, I'm working my butt off. Some months I'm getting 6, 7 job orders. I'm working my butt off. I get a few of them really close. And he said, if I'm honest with you, Terry, what I then tend to do is I think I'm so close and these deals are gonna come good. He said, at a level, mentally, I'm already spending money. I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna pay off this bill and whatever. And of course, when you're working on contingency, then those deals fall through no fault of his. And I'm sure if you're a contingent recruiter, you've been there as well, when you've worked your butt off and it's fallen through. And he said, and he acknowledged that most of the time he was working, he wasn't getting paid. And that's the same for most contingent recruiters. Most of the roles they get, they don't fill. And the contingency recruiter will argue, well, if I can just find more candidates. But recruiters, when they say that, they're missing the point. One of the reasons he's not filling it, it's not criticism of you in any way whatsoever. But the very fact that you're competing with 3 or 4 other recruiters for the same job order means that's almost like going into a boxing ring with both hands tied behind your back. It's not a fair fight. Just the law of averages, you're not going to fill every single role. And Drew brought a really good point. What Mike did at that time, and maybe you're there, where you accept that as the norm. Well, that's just the way it is. And we all do that at some level. We say, that's just the way it is. But what Mike did, and I suspect one of the reasons that you're here today, is that he went, hell no, I'm going to raise my standards. Because the moment that you do that, you don't accept then that is the norm. And I want to take time out just to commend you for taking time out of your day today. You guys are really busy. You've made a decision to take time out of your day today to join us on this call to discover more. So that says something about you. At some level, you're saying the way it is at the moment, I want more than that. And yeah, I've got to say, utmost respect for you for making that decision. Back to you, Drew.
Yeah, again, I just want to check in. Has that sort of story where Mike was, has that resonated with you at all? Just give me a yes or no in the chat box. I just want to see if, make sure you're in the right place. Has sort of the, maybe not the exact numbers, maybe not the exact revenue level, but I guess some of the frustrations that Mike was going through. Can you relate to that in any way? Just give me a yes or no in the chat box. If it's no, that's fine as well. Again, it's probably not going to be relevant to you, but if it's a yes, let us know in the chat box. I do want to hear from all of you as well. Awesome. So Jody says yes, Joanne says yes, Richard, yes, Ashley, yes, Mickey, AO, yes, Paul, Edward, yes, Clay says very relatable, Chris, somewhat, Richard, somewhat, Rupert, yes, right? So again, I don't know where there's obviously going to be differences because, every business is different, but I wanted to make sure, give you a bit of backstory to make sure that you're in the right place. Again, if this doesn't relate to you in any way whatsoever, it's probably, the solutions that you came up with aren't going to relate to you either. I resemble that remark. Yeah, I'm going to relate to you either. But if it's somewhat relatable, then it's likely that the sort of, I guess, some of the journey or realizations that Mike went through might be relatable to you too, and might be things that you can plug into your business. So what we're going to go through now, we call the training three pivotal changes that one recruitment business owner made to go from billing 6 figures per year to 6 figures per month. It's actually, rather than 3 changes, it's sort of 3 realizations that he came to, with our help, 3 realizations that he came to, but then, and I guess an explanation of the changes that he made off the back of those realizations. Again, just want to check in. Does that make sense? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. And Terry, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, just that majority of recruiters who speak to have been in a very, very similar situation. So I just want to let you know that you're not alone. If that related to you, there are a lot of your competitors out there. The difference is they're accepting that is the norm. They're saying, well, that's just the way it is. Whereas you're saying, that's what I'm going through right now, but I'm open to the possibility that maybe I could raise my standards and do something about it. I'm open to the possibility I could double, triple what I'm generating per annum. I'm open to the possibility of working with clients who value and respect me. That's the thing that Mike said. He felt that at times he was treated with contempt by certain hiring managers, and there was no mutual respect. And again, this is about raising standards. He made that decision. This is all about making decisions where he went, no, my decision now, I'm only going to work with hiring managers who value what I do and respect what I do and will treat me accordingly, rather than those hiring managers. And we've all experienced them when you reach out to them, you send them the CVs or the resumes. Hell, I did this 20 years ago. I'm still waiting to hear from some of those hiring managers from 20 years ago. Never did they have the courtesy to respond to my calls. It doesn't have to be that way.
Awesome. Perfect. So let's look at the first of the realizations. The first of the realizations was actually around his marketing or his business development, what he was doing to generate interest for his business. And the first realization was that he can't create demand. He can just be top of mind when that demand occurs. So, his realization was, I can't create demand. I can just be top of mind when that demand occurs. And what he really meant by that is, and again, you may have already realized this as a recruiter, is that your clients, your prospects, they buy when they're ready to buy, not when we're ready to sell, right? So, that's the same in a lot of service businesses, but I think more so than recruitment. I think one of the beauties about this industry is that whether they like it or not, at some point or another, our prospects are going to need our services, right? They're going to need your help, right? So it could be the company expands, could be someone leaves, someone moves on. There's going to be a need for a recruitment service at some point, right? We can't necessarily control when or how bad that demand is, but we know it's going to happen at some point. I think, in a lot of markets after the pandemic, we're at a time now where that demand has gone up because, sort of a backlog or a lot of people have moved on. That demand's gone up. I think during the pandemic, that demand went down. Right? We had no real control of whether it went up or down. All we really can control is that we are the first person, or you are the first people or first company that the prospect thinks of when that demand occurs. Right, again, someone check in, does that make sense? Give me a yes or no in the chat box. We can't control demand. We can just be the first firm or first person that the prospect thinks of when that demand occurs, right? So, perfect. Awesome. So that was sort of, again, it sort of sounds obvious, but it was a real realization for him, because what he'd been trying to do with his business development is convince people to use his services, convince people to listen to him, convince people to almost need him. When he came to that realization, what he sort of did instead is he sort of realized that his ability to write business or generate new business was more important, or equally as important as his ability as a recruiter. So he sort of built up this perception in his mind beforehand that because he was a good recruiter, because he was good at recruitment, therefore he should be generating more revenue, right? And that's what he sort of what we said. Look, I've got this many years experience. I'm really good at what I do. I should be generating more, right? And again, it's something that we hear from a lot of recruiters, where what we know is that how good you are as a recruiter is irrelevant, right? We know some really sort of average recruiters who generate a lot of revenue because they're good at picking up business, they're good at generating revenue, right? So once he realized that, he sort of shifted his focus to not just being good at what he does and good at offering a good service, but good at developing his ability to generate business. So first thing he did is he left the market that he was he didn't have a market. He was sort of going to any market, working for anybody. So he picked a niche where he knew that there was consistent demand already, right? So he couldn't create demand. So he went into a market and decided to target a market where there was consistent demand already. And in his mind, rather than creating demand, he worked at beating obscurity and instead building authority. And when I say obscurity, if we think of generating business right now, the number one reason recruiters don't have enough business or don't have the amount of clients they want isn't because they've got a poor service, isn't because anything else. It's a lot of the time, right? It's because their ideal clients don't even know they exist. And if a client doesn't know you exist, no matter how bad the demand is, they can never buy from you, right? So that's one of the things he worked at beating. How do I go from being obscure to my ideal clients know I exist and also viewing me as an authority, right? Because he knew that even if they haven't got demand now, if they at least knew he existed and at least viewed as an authority, in the market as a recruiter, when that demand does come, he's going to be one of the first people they think of. Again, someone check in, does that make sense? Give me a yes or no in the chat box. And Terry, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, it reminds me of a story of, you may have heard this story, two search consultants have gone hiking in Canada, and they're walking through the woods hiking, and they hear a noise behind them, and about 100 meters away, they spot a grizzly bear, and they're like, hell, we're in trouble now, and they start running. But one of the consultants stops, takes his rucksack off, and the other consultant says, what are you doing? You're never going to outrun the bear by stopping. He said, no, I'm putting on my training shoes. He said, are you kidding me? Why would you put on your trainers now? You're not going to outrun the grizzly bear. And he said, you're missing the point. I don't have to outrun the grizzly bear. I just need to outrun you. And it's exactly the same for you. You don't need to be the best recruiter out there to be extremely successful. If you've got a well-defined niche, and Drew and Mike did that, there's a saying, isn't there? The narrower your niche, the broader your appeal. So if you're a generous recruiter, you're competing against everybody. But if you say, actually, no, I'm gonna make my niche, I don't know, dog groomers. So I'm now the expert recruiter within the dog grooming community. Now you just got to outrun those guys within the dog grooming community rather than the whole world. And if you then say, right, my role now is to become, rather being the best recruiter or the best kept secret, because many recruiters are very good recruiters, but nobody's heard of them. I'm now going to become the expert or the leader or the authority in this particular niche. Again, completely different thinking, but that's exactly what Mike did. And the other thing that he did that Drew kind of touched on is there's some things that go on within the business that you've got no control over what the client offers, how the candidate behaves. And we've all been let down by candidates and by clients. But what Mike acknowledges, those things he's got no control over. He can't create the demand. What he has got control of, and that's what you should be working on, is when the clients have demand, he's the first person they think of. Because you've got control over that. There's specific things that you can do as a recruitment or search firm owner to be at the forefront of their mind. But as you can see what's going on here, a lot of this is just a massive shift in your thinking. It's away from, I'll get it, I'm the best recruiter out there. So if I target the whole market, there's more potential business. Those things are almost impossible. Unless you're a multinational firm, it's impossible to target the whole market. But what if you say, actually, I'm going to have one specific market and I'm going to be what we call the celebrity, the go-to recruiter within that particular market. I'm the authority in that market. And Mike very quickly gave an example where he went to an exhibition within his particular niche, and he's just walking through the exhibition hall. People are coming up to him saying, are you Mike? They knew him. And the reason they knew him, because of all the activity, marketing activity that he'd done on different social media platforms, the emails he sent, the letters that he sent, but he was relentless in his marketing in that specific market. That's the key point I want to make there. So you need to outrun your competitors in a specific market and just be better known than them, and you're going to enjoy the kind of success that Mike enjoyed. Thanks, Drew.
Yeah, so what he did is in his mind is, again, if we're rather than our marketing, rather than our business development being designed to convince people to buy from us, he knew that he didn't have to do that, and he just had to one, make sure they knew he existed, right? So he thought about the market he was in, thought about his clients, his ideal prospects, and thought, where are they, right? I think, one of the mistakes that we make as recruiters, sometimes we focus on one platform, so it might be LinkedIn, and we assume that, because we're on LinkedIn, all of our clients on LinkedIn, two, they use it as regularly as we do, right? When the truth is, they probably don't, right? So he started thinking about that, and anywhere that his clients hand out, so we talk about exhibitions, Facebook, LinkedIn, anywhere that he knew his ideal clients would be, whether it's online or offline, he made sure that he was in front of them. And not just in front of them, not just there, not just present, but there demonstrating his authority. So he produced written content or video content where it showed that he knew and understood, one, about their sector, but two, about the challenges and headaches they were facing, right? So what his content wasn't doing was talking about how good he was as a recruiter, because they don't really care about that. He just wanted to make sure that they understood that, what happens when they get an investment, what happens when someone leaves a company, what happens when someone's underperforming, right? So we spoke about the challenges they were having, and then just said, look, if you need help with this, if you need me, just reach out or just send me a message, just pick up the phone and give me a call, right? So it was very, very, say subtle. Like he was out there in front of them in terms of the content, but he wasn't trying to sell to them. He was just saying, I understand your problem. Here's what I've done in the past to fix it, or here's how I've helped XYZ client fix it. If you're having a similar problem, reach out to me. And that's all he sort of focused on doing, is just building authority with this niche market, so people knew he existed, and not only knew he existed, viewed him as an authority. So that's the first thing. The other thing he did is, so this is under the same realization, right? He thought to himself, if I can't create demand, I can only be top of mind when demand occurs. What happens before that demand occurs, right? So with our clients, we now call this crystal ball marketing. So he started thinking about, my prospects at some point or another, they're going to have a need for my recruitment services, right? So I'm working hard to get in front of all of them, but actually, can I go a bit deeper and think about, what's a trigger event that means someone needs a recruiter, or means someone needs a recruitment service? So a few examples, and again, obviously it depends on what market you're in, but a few examples from him is like, well, when someone gets a promotion. When someone gets a promotion in his market, he knew that when someone got a promotion into a particular role, that one of the first things that they would do is probably look at their team and get rid of underperformers and bring in new performers, because they wanted to make their mark in that new role. Another thing was, he knew that when certain companies or certain type of companies in his niche got a round of investment, a new round of investment, one of the things they're going to do is look to build and develop their team. Right. So again, they're just two examples. So what he did is, rather than just being random with his business development, he made sure that his time and attention was focused on people who he could predict would have a demand in the short to the near future. Again, just want to check in. Does that make sense? Give me a yes in the chat box, or no if it doesn't, and then we can come to your questions. And Terry, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, just you made, again, as always, Drew, you make some great points. And the point you made about LinkedIn, just going back a bit, where most recruiters, and I want to be clear about this, I'm a former recruiter, so I was as guilty as this as anybody else. Spent all our time on LinkedIn thinking that's where all the business was and that's where all the clients are. The fact is, only 28% of the working population actually use LinkedIn. 28% of the working population use LinkedIn. It means that most of the working population are not on LinkedIn. And I thought it was a really good point that you made there. And the other point that Drew made there about your content isn't about how great you are and how successful you are and what your mission statement is. It's got to be content that resonates with the hiring manager. If you can talk about the problems that the hiring manager are having right now, and for most hiring managers, they're having three main problems around these areas. It's around time, lack of. It's around team. Something about the underperforming team. You're probably familiar with the 80-20 rule. If you've got a team, there's a percentage of your team that are underperforming. If you can post content or communicate to them about the challenges they're having in that area, that's going to resonate with them. Because as they're reading that or listening to that and being a video, so you're going, shoot, I'm having that exact same problem. I've got a team of whatever a team of whatever, but the percentage are underperforming. And that if I can improve the performance of those underperformers, it would have a massive impact on the business. And this crystal ball marketing is, you know, when an organization gets funding, there's a very good chance they're looking for what you do. When an organization enters a new market, there's a very good chance they're looking for what you do. And as Drew pointed out, when people get promoted, so rather than chasing the ambulance and cold calling, let me go to job boards and see how many jobs I can find on there, and then call those prospects. You actually reach out to a prospect when it's too late. They've already placed that ad on the job boards. They've already got half a dozen of your competitors already work on it. How would it be for you if you could talk to hiring managers before they pulled the trigger? When the hiring manager says, actually, in 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to start looking for a blah, blah, blah. Because what that means is then, amongst other things, you've got less competition, but it also means that you have to do things differently than you're doing them now. There's no more ambulance chasing and cold calling. You're now getting there ahead of your competitors. Go back to the story with the grizzly bear. You've got your training shoes on and you're outpacing your competitors. What would that mean to you if you could do that on a regular and consistent basis? Back to you, Drew.
Yeah, I just want to check if it makes sense. Again, if it's no, that's fine. Let us know and we can explain more. But yeah, give me a yes or no in the chat box. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. It's making sense. I do want to hear from all of you as well.
Yeah, and like Drew rightly said, if it's not making sense, please let us know and we can clarify anything that we said. Our role is to make this as easy for you as possible and to help you achieve your goals. But if we're not communicating that effectively, please let us know and we will do all we can to amend that.
Awesome, perfect. So look, moving on to realization. First realization is I can't create demand. I can just be top of mind when demand occurs. Second realization was collecting a certain fee is not proportionally more difficult the higher the fee is. So collecting a certain fee is not proportionally more difficult the higher the fee is, right? So what we mean by that is, so again, I don't know what your average fee is right now, right? So think about your average fee. So let's say, for example, your average fee is £8,000 or dollars or whatever your local currency is, right? What he meant by that is that to collect it or to get 8K off a prospect or a company, a client, it's not 10 times more difficult to charge 80K, right? So it's not. Is it more difficult to get a higher fee? Possibly, but it's not 10 times more difficult. So in his mind, if it's not 10 times more difficult, I may as well work and position myself to get a higher fee rather than the fee I'm getting. So rather than charging 8K for an average placement, I'm going to work to charge 40K or 80K. It doesn't matter what the increase is for you. It depends on where your starting point is. But if we're going to increase our fee, even if it is slightly more difficult to get a higher fee, right? It's not proportionally more difficult. So if we're going to get 10 times the fee, it's not 10 times as hard to win that fee from a client, or not 10 times as hard to fill the role. So for the same work or slightly more work, if we can get more output, in his mind, that would make more sense, right? To put slightly more in, but rather than working twice as hard and getting twice the result, if he could work twice as hard and get 10 times the result, that to him made a lot more sense when it came to the fee. Again, just want to check in, does that make sense? Give me a yes or no in the chat box, right? So it's not collecting a certain fee is not proportionally more difficult the higher the fee is, right? So no, 8K to 8K, yes, it's 10 times the fee, but it's not 10 times harder to sell, and it's definitely not 10 times harder to deliver, right? So that's what, in his mind, he sort of came to that realization. Again, if it doesn't make sense, let me know. Give me a no. But if it makes sense, give me a yes in the chat box or no in the chat box if it doesn't make sense. So it's not, collecting a certain fee is not proportionally more difficult the higher it is. Is there anything to add to that?
I'd go so far to say, as a former recruiter, it's actually easier the further up the food chain you go. So the more senior the role is, the easier it is actually to fill that role. You're less likely to get ghosted by a director. You're less likely to have the candidate not show up on the day that they're meant to start at the senior end. So it's actually easier. And here's a question worth asking yourself. And no, there's no need to share it with us, but think about the day you set up a business or the day you made that decision. I'm going to go off on my own. What your intention is, I'm going to go off on my own and start my own business. And my intention is to work my butt off and work every hour possible and have very little time for my family and those that I love? What was your intention to create an environment so your family or loved one can have the lifestyle that they truly desire? I suspect it's the latter. And if that's the case, again, I'm going to extremes now. You've got a choice. You can recruit at 4,000, get fees of 4,000 of your local currency, or you can make a decision to get fees of 40,000. But ultimately, that's your decision. But it's worth going back and checking in is what was my goal? What was my dream when I first entered this business? And very rarely do I talk to a business owner and said, actually, Terry, yeah, I want to work as hard as possible and make placements of 2,000 or 3,000, work all the hours and see very little of my family. In fact, nobody's ever said that to me. And I guess that you're the same. There was a certain lifestyle that you desired. Well, that lifestyle will perhaps may mean that you have to think differently and perhaps just move further up the food chain. Now, there's this mental block about, yeah, but it's easy to recruit somebody at 2,000 than it is at 40,000. If you've never done it, then I'd say to you, how do you know? But in most cases, that's not true. It's actually easier to recruit at the more senior level, as Mike discovered. And there's no correlation between the amount of work you put in and the fee that you get, none whatsoever. Cheers, Drew.
So yeah, so in his mind, like, he sort of realised that, you know, the fee that he was charging and the level that he was working at was based on, you know, his, you know, where he entered the market, like what jobs he'd had before. And again, you might be saying, so I don't know what level you recruit at now, I don't know what fee you charge right now. But it's, you know, if depending on how you became a recruiter, but most people fall into it, probably work for another recruitment firm and then go off on your own. We sort of set up our own business based on what we experienced in the recruitment firm that we had our, or a combination of experiences in the jobs that we've had, or the last job we've had, right? So he'd realised that he'd done that. But then in his mind, he's like, well, why not operate at a higher fee? Why not operate at a higher salary level? And he couldn't really think of a reason other than he's never done it before, right? But then, you know, when he first in recruitment, is the same token, he'd never worked at anything before. So he, in his mind, thought, well, you know what? It can't be too different. And if it is different, I'm gonna learn the differences and get better as a recruiter or get better at service in that level. Because, you know, if I can get, again, I don't know what your goals are in your business right now, but if we stick with the example of 100K monthly, let's say that your average fee is £8,000 or dollars, whatever your local revenue, whatever your local currency is. To get 100K, that would mean you need to make 12.5 placements on average per month, right? And the work involved, the number of candidates you need, and everything that goes with it. If your average fee is 8K, versus if your average fee was, let's say, 40K, so not even 10 times more, then you would only need two and a half placements per month on average, right? So again, the amount of work is significantly less to get the same reward, the same revenue reward, right? So in his mind, it's like, well, I'd rather work less and get paid more. Then perhaps I wouldn't feel so burnt out. Perhaps I wouldn't have to this challenge I've got dealing with so many candidates. Perhaps I wouldn't have all these headaches that I have now if I could work less but earn the same, or work less but earn more. So that was in his mind what he chose to do. And again, I don't know what level you're at right now, but if you think about your fee, you know, in black and white terms, there's only two ways really to increase your fee, right? Recruitment typically works on percentage terms, right? So we charge a percentage of the final salary, or sometimes the final compensation package, right? So the first way to increase your fee is either, you know, ask for a higher percentage. So if you're asking for 20% now, next time you speak to a client, you ask for 21% or 25% or 30%. You're asking 15%, you ask for 17%, whatever, right? We just ask for a higher percentage, right? That's the one way to increase your fee, which is typically the way most people go. The other way is we don't necessarily increase the percentage that we ask for, we just work at a higher salary level, right? So let's say we charge 20% now, but the salary level we work at is our candidates on 20K per year versus still charging 20%, but our candidates now on 100K per year, right? So that's another way we can increase our fee. He decided to do both. He's not only gonna, you know, I think he was charging around 18-20% at the time. So he's not only going to ask for a higher fee in percentage terms, but he's also going to move up the salary level. So when he wins, it's a bigger win. Again, I just want to check in. Does that make sense? Give me yes or no in the chat box. And Terry, did you say you have a question?
Yeah, so just answered Craig a couple of questions here. I answer your second question first. Relationship driven. Here's the other problem with a lower fee. You'll almost become a commodity, because you say I can do this for 10,000. Somebody else says I can do this for 9,500. And the further up the food chain you go, so the more senior the role is, the more business critical it is for the business. So you ask a hiring manager if they're recruiting a CEO or an FD, do you want the cheapest candidate for this role, or do you want the best candidate? Hiring managers, hell, I want the best candidate. Price doesn't come into it now. It's got nothing to do with it. It's about them finding the right candidate to fill this role. Your offering is no longer a commodity. Your offering now is solving the problem they have right now. So you're right. There is a bit more effort, and you kind of have to think differently about how you approach it. But ultimately, as Drew said, for you to fill 10 roles a month at 8,000, or you to fill 2 roles a month at 40,000, ultimately, which one's easier? Never mind the recruiting. Everything else that is involved in recruiting, having to chase 8 invoices rather than 2, and all the other problems that come into recruiting. I hope that answers your question. Takes much effort to sell a B compared to Hyundai. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if you're at the bottom end or the lower or the entry levels, it's probably a better language. We talk to some recruiters, and then they're getting fees of 3,000, 4,000, maybe even 5,000. And if they've got a team, you then ask the question, well, do you know what the cost per placement is? Every time you make a placement, what does it cost your business? And they sit and look at it and they go, shoot, it's actually costing us 4,000 per placement. When we make a placement at 5,000, there's nothing in it. And sometimes our team are making placements at 3,500, 4,000. We're actually not making any money at that kind of level. That's less of an issue when you make the decision, and I'll keep using that word. It's about you deciding, actually, I'm going to raise my standards and I'm going to operate at a higher level for the good of my own health and that of all those that I love as well. Hope that answers your question, Greg.
Yeah, I think as well, just to add to that, or just to add to the this realization, I think especially for now, right? We're speaking to a lot of recruiters, and their biggest challenge is candidates. Hearing there's not enough candidates. There's not enough candidates. Again, the higher the fee, one, the candidates you speak to or communicate with are usually more committed. That's the first thing. But secondly, if we're having to work on less roles to get the same revenue, then you need less candidates, right? So this, again, suddenly that problem disappears as well. The thing's extremely relevant to what's going on right now. Again, someone check in, does that make sense? Give me a yes or no in the chat box. If no, that's fine as well. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. But Terry, anything to add to that as well?
Yeah, just the other thing as well that Greg said about, if you're, so example, the typical fee is 20%, let's say an average salary of 40,000. So his average fee is 8,000. And again, he's operated on contingent. So contingent recruiters don't fill most of the roles. So most of the time on contingency, you're never going to get paid. If you've got a team of consultants working on contingent, most of the time you're paying them and they're not delivering for you. And what about from the client's point of view? If you don't fill most of the roles, that means that most of the roles that hiring managers give you, you let them down on because you've made that decision to work on contingent. Now, it may not be your fault that you don't fill the roles, but that doesn't change anything in the eyes of the hiring manager. Yeah, when I give these recruiters my roles, most of the time they don't fill them. That's the image, that's the perception of you with the hiring manager. You would argue, yeah, but you've given it to half a dozen of my competitors as well. And if you just gave it to me, maybe I could. Oh yeah, but I think I'm taking a gamble doing that because of the way that you position yourself. But you can decide to change all that. And it comes back to, we talked earlier about raising your standards. Thanks, Drew.
Awesome. So again, just to recap very quickly, realization number one, I can't create demand. I can just be top of mind when that time occurs. Realization number two, controlling a certain fee is not collecting a certain fee is not proportionally more difficult the higher the fee is. And the third realization was really around, I guess, his delivery and his process within the business. And that realization was, the more time I spend on RGA, the more revenue I make. So let me just explain what RGA means for those that aren't familiar. So RGA is, what we, with the recruitment search business owners that we help, RGA stands for a revenue generating activity. So RGA, revenue generating activity. So again, simplistic thing. The more time you spend on a revenue generating activity, assuming you've got a revenue generating activity that works, a process that works, the more time and energy that he spent on that area, he quickly realized the more money that he'll make, right? Again, it makes perfect sense. There's no rocket science to it. It's no, can't really argue against that statement, right? But what he found himself doing, or what he had found himself doing, is, at a time he was solo operator, so he's still the only fee earner in his business, but at the time he was the only person in his business. And again, if you're the owner of your business, you can probably relate to this. He was getting dragged doing everything. He was doing the admin, he was doing the accounting, he was doing the marketing, he was doing the sales, he was doing the delivery. He was doing everything, right? So, and because at the time he didn't really like the business development side of things, right? He was comfortable with the recruiting. It was even okay actually on the sales call, but he didn't like the business development side of things. So he was finding that he was always going to put it off. He was always going to find an excuse not to do it. And obviously, with working on contingency as well, the more job orders that he got on, the less time he had to spend on a revenue generating activity, right? So it was always bottom of the pile. And because it was always bottom of the pile, he was consistently not getting the results he wanted, right? Again, I hope this is sort of really simplistic, but I hope it makes sense, because it's something that, as simple as it sounds, something that I see so many recruitment search firm managers doing. It's something that sometimes if I'm not paying attention, I find myself doing, right? You get dragged into this, stuff that, it's important, it needs doing, but it's not the key revenue generating task, right? And he found himself constantly being pulled away from business development activity, partly because he didn't enjoy it, and so he wasn't prioritizing it, but partly just because he had so much to deal with that he spent, and obviously the less time he spent on it, or the less his time was consistent on it, the more the lower his revenue was, and also like he was having inconsistencies with revenue as well. So not only was it not where he wanted it to be, he was experiencing this yo-yo up and down revenue stream. So he 1 month when he had no business on, he'd work really hard at the business development, win business, then spend all his time on delivery, and stop the business development. Once he delivered that business, it's always at square one, right? So that good month, bad month, good, and it was almost like this up and down feast and famine effect he had in his business, because he wasn't consistently focused on the revenue generating activities. Again, I just want to check in. Does that make sense? Give me a yes or no in the chat box. And Terry, anything you'd add to that?
And just to come back to what I said at the beginning, I talked about what I call the yeah, but, and it's something that we all say. So I say, why aren't you doing the revenue generating activity? And the response I get is, yeah, but I've got these job orders to work on. Or yeah, but I've got something else to do. And that yeah, but is just getting in the way, because ultimately not doing anything. So as Drew said, you then have this family feast. And you've all been there as recruiters, where you have that quarter or that month where you absolutely smash it. And you're sitting back, you light yourself a cigar and you pour yourself a drink thinking, we've done well this month. And the next month, absolutely nothing but tumbleweeds. Well, that's inevitable if you're behaving like that. Because what Mike does consistently, daily, is marketing activity. So he's always got an abundance of leads coming in. Always got an abundance of leads coming in. And the other benefit of that is that if you've then got an abundance of leads, give you some idea, Mike's getting somewhere between sort of 30 and 40 meetings a month, every month, with hiring managers who are in the market for what he does. So Mike decides who he works with, not the other way around. Because if you're letting the hiring manager decide who they work with, they probably haven't got your best intention at heart. But Mike can look at things completely different, because he's got an abundance of leads. He knows he's got an abundance of meetings that month. Some hiring managers, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to work with you. We're going to work on contingency. I'm going to pay you 15%. I'm not going to pay you for 100 days. Some recruiters go, okay. Mike's response is, hell will freeze over before that ever happens. But that's because he's got an abundance of leads. He's got an abundance of meetings. He's doing the revenue generating activity on a consistent basis. So there's no desperation with Mike. He's deciding who he works with. He's telling hiring managers they have to qualify to work with him rather than the other way around. He tells hiring managers that unless they get onto his PSL, they may not be able to work with him. But that's a decision that he's made. Back to you, Drew.
Yeah, and again, just to be clear as well, and this goes partly to realization number one as well. He knows that the meetings that he's booking are with people that are going to be recruited in the near future, right? So he's made sure that he's not just speaking to hiring managers who may not be recruiting. He's speaking to hiring managers who he knows has like a near to an immediate intent to use a recruitment service, right? So that's how he's able to shift his positioning. And again, it's another way he's making sure that he's focused on revenue generating activities. But outside of that, the two main things he did is he looked at, what he was spending his time doing, from the delivery, from the business development, from the sales, from the admin side of things, from the finance side of things, to even, adding people on LinkedIn, the smallest detail. He looked at everything and started to think about, okay, which of these tasks or which of these activities is it me to have? Is it important for me to have critical involvement in? Like, it's only me can do. Right? As a business owner, as a CEO, there'll be things in your business. Like, you can do everything, right? You're good at everything. You're probably the best at everything. But there's things in your business as well that only you can do. So he looked at that, and that's normally going to be the revenue generating activity, right? Because you're as a recruiter, you're probably the face of the business, right? You're at least the face of your desk. So in his mind, he's like, well, anything that's not involved in that, I'm going to try and outsource or automate, right? So he's really big on, so he's still the solo fee earner in his business, but he's built an outsourced team of assistants, based in, India, Philippines, so that lower salary in terms of what you have to pay them. So he's paying them at the max $10 an hour for something that was taking an hour of his time, but now means he can spend more time on generating revenue. It's obviously going to be substantially more than that, right? So he first thing he did is outsource and automate what he didn't have to be involved with, and that's an ongoing process that he still looks to do all the time. Even parts of the delivery, what can I offload, what can I give to somebody else, and what can I automate? And the other thing he did as well is he used to be a contingency recruiter. So again, we talked about his fill rate. That was one of the big problems. Not only, even though he's able to win job orders, he wasn't filling them. So he's working, and still 70% of the time he wasn't getting paid. So he looked at, well, how can I get paid? Well, how can I make sure I fill all the roles I work on? So one of the shifts he made is he went and moved to an exclusive / retain model. So rather than typical contingency when he was competing with multiple recruiters, now, because he's speaking to these people before they pull the trigger, he was able to say to them, well, look, rather than you put this to market, speaking to multiple recruiters, how about you give me 4 weeks, 2 months, whatever it needed? How about you give me this time to work on it exclusively, before you put it out to market, right? And because he was getting in there before they started the process, he was able to do that. So, and suddenly, as soon as he excluded the other recruiters working on the vacancies, he was then able to dedicate more time and attention to each vacancy, because he wasn't competing against the clock, right? Again, if you're a contingency recruiter, one of the things you're concerned with is finding the candidates, not just the best candidates, but how quick can we get these candidates across, right? You could spend more time and energy on each role, meaning that actually the clients will get a better service. So as soon as he's done that, and once they're able to dedicate more time and energy, his fill rate went from 20 to 30%, sort of 80, 90%. So suddenly he's now not only he's got more opportunities, he's not only charging a higher fee, he's also filling more of the roles as well, because he went for the exclusive model. And then with some of his clients as well, once he built a relationship, he's also able to go to retain model as well, where he's getting them actually to pay him up front, which helped massively with his cash flow. Again, just want to check in. Does that make sense? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. And Terry, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I want to ask everybody a question. What would it mean to you and your business and to your revenue if you could double the number of placements that you make every month? So you do nothing else, you used to get the same number of job orders, but you were to double the number of placements you were making. For most businesses, that's transformational. Just doing that alone. Well, doing some of the things that we just shared with the Mike that Mike's doing, you can do exactly the same and literally double or triple in some cases the number of placements you're making each month. Same, same number of job orders. At the moment, you're filling 30%, maybe 40%, and you to get that up to 80%, 90%. But what we know is if you keep doing what you're doing now, in the future, but expect things to change, it won't. You have to change what you're doing for that change to happen. And we're all guilty of that at times, aren't we? Where perhaps it's weight or whatever. You think, yeah, I need to lose some weight, but I'll keep eating and behaving the way that I am now. Nothing will change. The only changes happens when you make that decision. When one morning you look at yourself in the mirror with absolute nippy on and you think, shoot, I've got to behave differently now. It could be your weight, it could be your business, but it's when you make that decision.
Just want to check in, is that making sense? If you found it useful so far, give us a yes or no in the chat box, and any questions, ask as well. Perfect. Awesome, good stuff. Again, any questions, post them there in the chat box. Again, we're sort of going to come to an end now. Like what we've done is give you a quick overview. If you want help implementing any of those ideas, or you want help with this, if you go to makemoreplacements.com/start, and I'll put the link in the chat box. There's a short application form there. Then you can book a one-on-one call with Terry, where he can sort of look at your business, ask you a few specific questions, and see if you can apply the same ideas to your business when it comes to one, becoming an authority in your market, two, collecting a higher fee, and then three, filling more of the job orders that you work on, or if it suits, going down a fully retained model. That's makemoreplacements.com/start. But yeah, any questions, you can post them in the chat box now, and we'll get to them.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I just want to share something that was shared with me about a month or so ago. This poem that was sent to me, and it was this: marriage is hard. Divorce is hard. Choose your hard. Obesity is hard. Fit is hard. Choose your hard. Being in debt is very hard. Being financially disciplined is very hard. Communication is hard. Not communicating is hard. Life will never be easy. It will always be hard, but we can choose our hard. Choose wisely. Hi, Mickey. Good to hear from you, buddy. Thank you, Jody. Thanks, Chris. We've touched it on a few times. It's about you making that decision, you making that choice. But until you make that decision, nothing will change. Being where you are now is very hard if you're not happy with it. To get to where you want to, we wouldn't dream of saying it's going to be easy. But if you want to double your revenue, or if you want to get to a situation where Mike, what he's generating in a month he was previously doing in a year, he won't tell you it was easy. Sure, it was hard.
Again, just go to makemoreplacements.com/start. Short application from there, then you can book a call directly with Terry. You can go over the specifics of this in your business, see if it makes sense. Again, thank you all for joining us. I hope to see you again for these free trainings that we put on. And yeah, again, thank you for engaging and getting involved as well, as you did. Again, makes it easy for us, speaking through a screen. But yeah, until next time. Take care.
Take care. Take action. Be relentless. Cheers, folks. Thank you very much.